Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for Theater Appreciation 1101, I got a new mic, so I'm hoping that things are definitely much clearer. But this is for your midterm, okay? This is for your midterm. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of briefly go over some questions that will probably be on your midterm. So as I'm going through this, you may want to take a few notes. And go back and look at the other notes and the other PowerPoints that we have done up till now. Okay. So one of the things that we of course are going to talk about is what is the main reason why theater changes with each performance. And of course, remember that theater changes with each performance because the audience changes. No one can do something exactly the same way every night. And then the next one, of course, is what are the 3 plays and the 1 musical that we are going over this semester? And of course, we have A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, about an African-American family in the 1950s that move into a new home, and then they have some conflicts between the mother and the son. We also have You Can't Take It With You by Hart and Kaufman. With that, they have Alice, who have the eccentric family that she's scared to introduce her Beyonce Tony to. Then we have, I call it the masterpiece of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamlet. And of course, like I say, that's on the cover of the book. Now, excuse me, Hamlet, but Hamilton, okay? And this is, of course, the story of Alexander Hamilton, but it is done in different forms of music. And finally, we have Macbeth. Okay, Macbeth is the one that, out of the Shakespeare's plays that they chose to elaborate on. And of course, Macbeth starts off with Banquo and Macbeth are traveling from war victoriously, and they run into the 3 witches. And of course, the 3 witches tell Macbeth that he will be king. Macbeth refers that to his wife and Lady Macbeth, and of course Macbeth do everything humanly possible to make that come true, which includes a murderous rampage. Okay, and like I said, we went in depth with those different plays and the musicals, so just go back and refer to your notes. Now we're going to move on is, of course, what is the definition of theater? Well, the definition of theater is an event. It's human action, okay? And who is frequently credited as being the first actor. So think about Thespius. Thespius is known as the first actor pretty much during his time. He got up there and seemed as if he acted out something. Okay, during that time when they had the theatron. Of course, the theatron is the origin of theater. That's where the word theater comes from. During the Greek time, Thespius got on stage, and so he is credited as being the first actor. Okay. The next one, of course, is what is the definition of a playwright? And I always say this every semester. Just so happens that my last name is Wright, coincidentally. So, playwright, Playwright, is the builder of plays. Okay, that is the definition of a playwright, someone that writes a play. And some people get it confused with W-R-I-T-E, but remember, it's my last name, Playwright. Okay. Now let's go over some definitions. For instance, what is the definition of farce? Okay, farce is extreme comedy. So out of all the plays, what play would represent extreme comedy? Out of the 3 plays and the 1 musical, which one would represent extreme comedy? Well, out of that 4 is You Can't Take It With You. Okay, you can't take it with you, have very eccentric characters. Therefore, you can't take it with you is definitely connected with farce. Now, melodrama is just that, drama, okay? Something that's happening today, pretty much real life drama. So what play is connected mostly with that? And if you look at all of them, you would say A Raisin in the Sun. Okay, that would closely connect with melodrama. And of course, well, what play connects with tragedy? Well, you can always look at Macbeth. Okay, Macbeth, of course, connects with tragedy. And so with that, we're going to move on to what is the Big Four of Shakespeare? What is the Big Four of Shakespeare? The Big Four of Shakespeare, of course, is Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, and Othello. And why are these called the Big Four? Well, the reason why these are called the Big Four is according to academia, according to the collegiate world, according to the people in the universities and the colleges. These are Shakespeare's best works. Okay? So that was a question on your last exam. So, you know, if you put, well, they are Shakespeare's big work, well, that's only part of it. But according to academia, these are Shakespeare's best work. So that is the answer that I'm looking for. And it was also, it was stated in the other presentation as well. Okay. And of course, you know, like I said, I'm not going to say a lot about Othello, King Lear, Hamlet, and Macbeth. We just just went over a little bit when it concerning Macbeth, but of course Hamlet sees the ghost of his father. Of course, that's how that begins, and the entire royal family dies at the end of that. Othello. Okay, well, let's continue on. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe just a little synopsis about Macbeth, Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear. Like I was saying previously, of course, Othello, instead of listening to his wife and believing his wife, he began to believe lies, and as a result, he ends up killing his wife, strangling her to death in her bed. We have King Lear, of course, that's the one with the 3 daughters. Cordelia, the youngest daughter, was the only one that really did love him. You had Regan and Goneril, who really, they was just after his kingdom. So, of course, that is what King Lear is about. But that is why those are called his Big Four. According to academia, those are Shakespeare's best. So keep that in mind. So now let's move on to a little bit about Shakespeare. Okay. For instance, where was Shakespeare born? Shakespeare was born in Abbott, London, and created a theater group called the King's Men. Okay. And so we don't really elaborate a lot about Shakespeare, but that is one thing I, of course, want you to know. And yes, he did write more than just plays. He did sonnets and other writings. So keep that in mind as well. So if there's a question on there that says, well, did he write more than just plays? Well, of course he did. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at are isms. Isms is just a creative way of looking at the world through art and theater in this instance. Okay? Some of the isms are going to be located in chapter 5. The only ones that I want you to be familiar with pretty much are realism, romanticism, expressionism, and theatricalism. Mainly theatricalism and realism. Theatricalism was connected to one of the plays that I had you to watch called The Caucasian Chalk Circle. And remember that is, of course, it's not about racism, but it is about a mountain. And that is where this particular scene has taken place, written by Bertolt Brecht. and is about a servant woman and a rich woman, and the rich woman has given her son to the servant woman. The servant woman has taken care of the son for a while, and then the rich woman comes back and wants her son back. And so what they did was the judge drew a circle in the middle and said, who's ever strong enough to pull the child on the other side is the true mother. And of course, the rich woman pulls with all of her strength, but the servant woman, she doesn't want to pull on the child because she doesn't want to hurt the child. And the judge rules in the favor of who really does love the child is the servant. Okay. The reason why this is connected with theatricalism is because with theatricalism, the playwright wants the audience to feel as if they're watching a play, okay? That they really don't want them to connect with what's on stage. Because even with this play, like there is a chalk circle, excuse me, drawn in the middle of the stage. Usually the child that's represented is actually a doll. The people, if you look on at the play, they're wearing masks, okay? So they want you to detach as much as possible. So with theatricalism, the playwright wants you to feel as if you are watching a play and not really connect with the characters as if you would do with a different type of play, okay? So remember the Caucasian chalk circle connected with theatricalism and what that means. Now we're going to move into the Federal Theater Project, okay? The Federal Theater Project, the FTP. Of course, that was a movement between 1935 and 1939, right after the Great Depression. The government wanted a way to employ people that were in the arts, because during that time the morale was low because of what was going on during the Great Depression. And so President Roosevelt, he agreed to create this plan for people that was in the arts. Now remember, during that time, it wasn't like now where you had television and all of that to entertain people and you could just go to the movies. Of course, they didn't have computers and all of that back then, so live theater was a way to really lift the morale of people. And there were 4 parts of the Federal Theater Project. It was the radio theater, live theater, African American theater, and the living newspaper. The living newspaper was just that. It was the news live on theater. Radio theater, of course, that's theater on the radio, and African American theater gave an opportunity for African Americans to work in the theater field. Okay. So, of course, it ended because of political issues at the end, and the person that was over it was Haley Flanagan. Why was she chosen? Well, she was chosen because she was a graduate professor in theater, and they thought that she could bring something original to the program. Okay. So we're going to move on to part 2. Not that much of that, and that will be African American theater.